Here in France, a grim milestone, the 100th suspected feminicide of 2019. We're only at the start of September. What to do to prevent the murder of women at the hands of their partners or ex-partners? Yes, we'll ask about that 26-year-old man in the Riviera town of Cagnes-sur-Mer who's in custody after the death of his 21-year-old partner, and what to expect on the eve of a government seminar to kick off a vast campaign to stop domestic violence. What can teachers, police, courts, and policymakers do? What can we ourselves do in our daily lives? More broadly, what are France's neighbors doing, and what's really the trend in an age where we've perhaps gotten better at calling out everyday harassment, but still can't seem to prevent murder? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the fight against feminicide. Among those attending that government seminar on Tuesday, Hélène de Poncet, whose sister, Marie-Alice Dibon, was murdered by her ex-partner back in April. Thank you for being with us. I want to thank as well criminal defense attorney Martine Moscovici. Welcome back to the show.
Good evening.
Journalist Natacha Henry, her books include Frapper n'est pas aimer. How would you translate that?
To hit is not to love.
To hit is not to love. She organizes seminars in stopping and preventing gender-based violence. Thank you for being with us. And from Cheltenham in England, forensic criminologist Jane Monckton-Smith, senior lecturer at the University of Gloucestershire. Welcome to the show. The France 24 debate on Facebook and on Twitter, hashtag F24debate. France 24, a partner for Tuesday's National Day for raising awareness on domestic violence and feminicide. Just one of the cases that we've been followed. It's a story by Julie Dungelhoff, read by Catherine Norris-Trent.
Elle s'appelait Julie. Elle a été assassinée le 3 mars 2019 par son ex-compagnon. Elle avait 34 ans et 2 enfants, de 8 ans et 10 ans.
Alors il serait monté à l'appartement. Julie a ouvert et il était armé, donc il lui a tiré une balle. Elle s'est sauvée sur le balcon et il aurait tiré une deuxième balle. Et après, il y a eu la dame, la voisine d'en dessous, qui aurait vu ce monsieur descendre l'escalier.
La voisine a dit que quand elle m'a vue, elle a levé la tête et elle a pu bouger, elle a regardé en disant « il m'a tuée ». Au début, tout était beau, tout était tout beau, tout rose. Elle lui en a mis plein les yeux.
Elle commençait à la détruire, doucement, à lui faire comprendre que ses amis, il fallait qu'elle arrête, que travailler, ça ne servait à rien, que sa famille, pourquoi faire. Donc on sentait qu'il la détachait. Puis je pense qu'arrivé un moment, elle avait quand même peur pour sa vie, pour la vie de ses enfants. Et que pour tout ça, elle a accepté. Jusqu'au moment où elle nous a fait comprendre qu'elle en avait marre et qu'il fallait qu'elle parte. Voilà. Et ce monsieur est arrivé dans la conversation en colère et nous dit que de toute façon, ça ne se passerait pas comme ça, et que si elle quittait pas la Corse, il la défigurerait, il la tuerait.
Il la défigurerait, il lui ferait la misère, il la suivrait comme son nom.
Et à partir de là, ça a été l'enfer pour elle. D'où là a commencé les plaintes à la gendarmerie pour menaces de mort, pour harcèlement. Je pense qu'au minimum, elle a fait entre 6 et 7 plaintes. Ils me posent des questions, quand, comment, où, à quelle heure. Voilà, après, c'est eux.
Ils ne donnent pas de solution.
Voilà. Après, vous pouvez rentrer. Il n'y a pas eu une fois où ils lui ont dit « attendez, bougez pas ».
Elle n'a pas été aidée. Elle n'a pas été prise au sérieux. Ça, c'est sûr. Quand elle avait déjà été portée plainte, alors, elle avait dit aux gendarmes, vous savez, il a une arme. Et elle fait, mais il faut vraiment qu'il me tue pour que vous me preniez au sérieux. Voilà. Pour qu'on me prenne au sérieux, il faut qu'on me tue.
Martine Moscovici, lots to talk about when you hear that one account. But first of all, this idea of 6 or 7 complaints not being taken seriously, is there anything more those distraught parents could have done?
Police could have done his job, but most of the time they don't. And here they accepted her complaint, but very often they don't accept women's complaint. You say, okay, it's nothing.
They won't even hear their deposition.
Yes, but they don't do their jobs. We have a big problem with the training of policemen.
Why don't they do their jobs?
Because they're not trained for it. And why aren't they trained?
So it's not... Go ahead.
Because there's no money to train them.
It's not a question of them being swamped or having too much else in their caseloads.
Also, but also there's a problem of training. It's a huge problem of training. And you see, in this case, they could have arrested him and put it in jail instead of doing anything.
All right. It's haunting because it reminds us of the latest case that happened in the French Riviera town of Cagnes-sur-Mer. A neighbor claims that the partner of the 21-year-old who was murdered late last week told him she was breaking up with him during a heated argument. He quote, jumped on her like a trampoline, says a neighbor. It's not just police who are slow to intervene, she claims. The neighbor says in an interview with local radio, if I heard it, everybody heard it, especially the downstairs neighbor whose apartment's on the street. Everyone's windows are open. I can't understand why people didn't intervene. There were also 2 young people on a motorcycle. They saw the start of it. No one did anything. It's not just the police who don't intervene, Natasha.
I think that the good thing about having debates like this now and the government wanting to talk about this, the only positive thing about all this is that the general public will hear the voices of the families of victims and neighbors who've tried to do something. And the maybe the positive thing around all this will be that more people will be aware of the seriousness of the situations. And the fact that the feminist groups are now publishing the lists of the names of those 100 women who died this year, killed by their partner or ex-partner, it gives them a name and an age and an identity, and it makes things a bit more close to us. And
but we had a very high-profile case back in 2006. The former captain of France's national rugby team, Marc Cécilion,
yes,
he killed his wife at a barbecue, and why wasn't there this kind of outcry then?
It takes years. I've been working on this for 10 years. I published a book almost 10 years ago, To Hate Is Not to Love. Everything is in that book. Everything that Martine is saying now, which is train the police, train social workers, train GPs, train everyone. We've been saying that for years. Now the feminist movement is so fed up with nothing happening that they are publishing these names and they are doing all those demonstrations, and maybe somehow it will put some pressure on the government to release more money for this. I train midwives, for instance. I train midwives in detecting victims of domestic violence. If I start with European money, if I start at the beginning by asking how many cases you have every year, they say 4. A year later, it's like 200. Why? Because they had the training. They know how to ask the right question, when to ask the question, what to answer when, according to the answer, and they're saving lives.
Hélène de Pensée, before I ask you about your sister, something the father said in that report we saw, it started little by little. What was your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is that in the case of my sister, which is the one I know the best, is that we haven't really been able to detect that something was really going wrong, and I'm not sure she even figured it out really. So as far as I'm concerned, I think that, and what you were saying, Natasha, is very true, is that we need the society, the entire society, you, me, our neighbors, everyone, to realize that this is not just a fait divers that goes at the very back pages of the newspaper. It's not
just something for the crime pages.
Exactly. It's something. It's a real society phenomenon. It's a society. It's a social plague, really. And people need to be made aware of this. And if the groups make it more human by communicating the names and numbers and identity and stories of these women, then I think it will touch more people, and more people will realize it does not just happen to others. You know, it can be your family who gets hit tomorrow.
And tragically, it happened. That's what happened to you in April. Your sister goes missing after seeing her ex-partner. She was with somebody else, and you don't hear from her for a few days.
So here is one of the issues with the press coverage that happened at the time, that everything has been mixed up. So my sister had a partner. She liked to call him her life partner, which is really
ironic.
Really ironic and sad to the light of what happened. But she went missing, and we couldn't contact her anymore. But she was still living with this man, and she was in the middle of putting an end to this relationship. So when I hear Martine talk about the police doing or not doing their job properly, the speed at which the police reacted was not satisfactory before her body was found. So everything that happened before she was found dead is that the police really didn't want to intervene, and they only took the filing for missing person. So in a case like this, what's really important is the relatives, our family didn't realize what was happening. And now that I understand better how a destroying relationship like the one she was in happens, that as the father of Sophie was saying, that he isolated her from her family, from her friends. You know, this is something that you can be attentive to and that you can react on. You know, if your daughter or your friend is getting less of to see her friends, that's an issue. So we didn't realize that. And then when I hear that the police,
and which was the case in the case of your sister, you had less access to her.
In the case of my sister, she had a public life that was very active. She had a lot. I mean, she was outside all the time, but more on the work side and on her friend's side. But he isolated her from my mother. And, mom and daughter's relationship is something where you can detect a lot. So the fact that he prevented her from getting along well with my mother was an issue. And
one final point on this. The partner, he in Italy he died. We don't know whether it was a suicide or whether he was killed. He was run over by a truck. Did he run in front of the truck? We're not sure. But there's still a case ongoing because the son is accused of acting as an accomplice in disposing of the body. If the son was not being if there was no case against the son in the courts, that would be it. It would be the end of the.
Yes, that's one of the things that in the association, I mean, in the group of victims' family, we want to say is that if the murderer kills themselves, then their name is never published. And I think this makes it very difficult for the families, because the name of my sister was all over the press, and you seem to have a lot of information that you probably found in press articles, because the investigation is still going on. So I even cannot talk about it. But if the son was not to be convicted, then yes, it would be the end of it, which I can only hope will not be the case.
All right. Jane Monkton-Smith, your thoughts on this whole conversation that's coming to a head right now in France here?
Well, I think you're having the conversations that are happening all over Europe and, all over the world, really. We know a lot more now about what prompts people to kill their partners. And I think one of the biggest problems that we all have is that perhaps we still think that this is a crime of passion, that this is spontaneous, that it can't be predicted. And I've done research myself very recently, and I have been training UK and Irish police. And it shows that there is actually a journey that they go through, and it's less to do with violence than about control. Some people use violence to control, but if we start to recognize that these people are very controlling, then I think we're on the way to being able to predict who's the most dangerous.
What makes people want to be that controlling to the point where they'll take the life of their partner?
Well, what causes somebody to have control issues is incredibly complex, as you can imagine. But it's rather thought that they fall into two broad categories, which is some people will have dependency issues. They may have had issues in their childhood where control over everything that happens to them becomes very important. But also there are people who see controlling their partner as a right. They might have a personality disorder. They may have just got messages from society and culture that this is an entitlement that they have.
Natasha, are you mentioning how there is hope and that you can save lives, and thus brings us to the point, this seminar, this government seminar. The Prime Minister is hosting it on domestic violence. It opens Tuesday. It's not just for more funding, by the way. It's also for how to change attitude. And the funding, not just for shelters for battered women is what activists are asking for, but also centers that work on prevention, like the one that caters to women aged 15 to 25. This is in the eastern Paris suburb of Bagnolet. It's a report by James Andre, read by Sanam Chantier.
For 5 decades, FIT, also known as Women Under One Roof, has been helping women who are victims of sexual and gender-based violence. This association provides secure shelter for those who've had to flee brutality, and the address of the accommodation is kept secret.
He was convicted, and when he was released, he was forbidden from coming anywhere near me. But we know that these men don't respect the law, and the justice system doesn't do much either. If I didn't have FIT, I'd be in a grave right now, since he would have found me and tried to kill me.
Here in Bagnolet, FIT has opened up a new reception and guidance centre.
And it's cut.
And it was local authorities that provided the space, an entire floor of the Maison des Associations, which has been renovated and furnished thanks to private donors. The goal is to reach young women aged between 15 to 25.
These are women who don't necessarily use the right resources. They don't call the National Domestic Violence Helpline. They don't know where to find information. And so this place is for these women, so that we can identify them and they can use us as a resource center.
This centre is open to everyone, and the decor is warm to encourage these women to confide in their coaches.
Let's look at one example. Someone would say, I'm on public transport, someone touches my backside. How do I react? It sounds stupid, but this kind of an exchange can encourage them to stand up for themselves, feel stronger and less alone.
This reception and guidance centre is unique in France, and for now it's only a 3-year experiment.
Well, let's pick up on that last point, Natasha Henry, because we've had recently anti-harassment laws enacted in France. Is that a different conversation from this one?
I think there's a very important point in that story that we just saw, is that it's open for young women. And I have to say, working with women's groups, that the victims are getting younger. And that's a big worry we have.
Why are they getting younger?
I don't know, because they think they should be in a relationship, because they are in relationships with men who are under what we call the influence of toxic masculinity, which is, I am going to control you, you're going to give me your phone, I'm going to read all the messages you received, you're not talking, you stop talking to your mother, you stop talking to this, you stop doing that, you tell me everything that you've done today. He hasn't even touched her yet. And it's all this violence, psychological violence and control that's going on. So, of course, my friends that I recognize in this story, of course, they're opening this for younger women. And I have to just say something. The people you see in that reportage, in that story, we've recognized them, and they are professionals. I think the journalist said local authorities, yes, but it's women who've been dealing with victims for decades. And I'm just saying this because if anybody is in a situation of being a victim or knowing a victim in France, you've got to dial 3919, and you've got to find the right people to talk to, because the question is, who do you talk to when this is going on? The first answer is talk to someone you trust. If you don't trust a policeman, don't talk to that policeman. Come back tomorrow. You know, if you don't trust your GP, change GPs and get one who can understand what's going on. And then, of course, women's groups. They know all about these situations and they'll help you.
All right, so this government seminar, what would you say to the Prime Minister Tuesday?
To me, you know, I don't have the history of working on that topic, like 10 years, because it just hit us. But to me, a number of changes need to happen. The society needs to stop thinking it's acceptable. And I think everything that is being done with the media really helps going through this path. The men need to stop thinking they can get away with it. And for that, the law needs to be enforced. There are a number of laws that exist. There are a number of measures that can be taken and that just aren't taken or not soon enough. So, for example, talking about men, you were talking about women's shelter. Okay. But when you are a victim of violence, why should you, as a woman, be the one to leave the house? You know, I think the men should be exfiltrated from the house and taken away and receive treatment, because acting like that means being sick. So if the men stop thinking they can get away with it, then maybe it might reduce the number of murders like feminicides. And the women also need to stop thinking it's okay to get beat up or to get controlled, and they need to trust what you were saying. They need to believe that if they step out and they go all the way through the police or through an association, but to the police, they will get supported. And there won't be a policeman who will say, "Oh, what did you tell him to look, you know, so that he beat you up that way," because that happens. So.
Martine Moscovici, can you turn the tables and instead of the women having to go to shelters in a toxic situation? Because legally there are issues if you do that.
Yes, well, you should know in civil law, you can go to a civil judge, to a family judge, and ask the man to leave the apartment.
But would you be safe?
Big problem. You know someone in the north of France called Luc Frémiot. He was a former DA, and what he was doing when there was domestic violence, the policeman went to the house, took the man, and put him in a place where there were desocialized people, and he was staying there at least 2 weeks, sleeping with 2 or 3 people in the same room. And these people were telling him, "What are you doing here? You have a family, you have a job." And he was obliged to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and also to attend support groups. and recidivism rate 6%. This was very, very efficient. There's something they
6% of those went on to again
6%, which is
their wives
very
or
low,
partners.
very low.
Yeah.
You have to cure these men. You have to protect. We have to protect these women, but we have to cure these men. At the first violence, these men should be cured.
Jane Monckton-Smith, you agree?
I do agree. I think there's far too much focus on trying to keep women away from dangerous men and letting the dangerous men walk the streets and go on to their next victim. And I think another thing we have to remember is that most of these homicides, murders, happen at the point of separation. So the risk gets very high at the point they are removed from the house or that they think a separation is going to happen. And we have got to start focusing on the dangerous person, not the victim.
You've developed an app for women. What do you do at that crucial moment when the woman decides to break ties with the abusive partner?
Well, most women who are in relationships with controlling men are actually quite frightened to leave. And despite us giving them that advice all the time, you've got to leave, we have to understand that they're going to need support to achieve that, to be able to do it. So it's recognizing that this is about somebody's taking away their control and they're not going to have it. They're outraged by it and they are going to take back control in whatever way they can. So we have to get in between. We can't expect women to hide away in refuges whilst these dangerous people are walking the streets.
Martine Moscovici, you heard Hélène de Poncé say that there are already laws on the books. Still, at this government seminar, what should the government be doing?
Giving money to the association because there's a huge problem of money. This association don't have enough money, and also train policemen because laws are here. They have everything to punish the violent men. Everything is on the table.
It's on the books.
It's on the books. The only thing which is missing is money to help associations and to train people.
And you said, Natasha Henry, with the work that you do, it's EU funding, not French funding?
Yes. I also want to underline the fact that it's costing a lot of money to the French state. And I work with a structure called Psytel, and we have established the figures. It costs every year to the French state 3.6 billion euros. Police intervention, hospitals, getting the kids to a safe place, justice, social services. It costs 3.6 billion euros. So if that money was spent on training frontline professionals, it would actually be, financially a good idea for the French government, if that is the message they want to hear. It would be less expensive to put that money in training than to put that money into rescuing who can be rescued afterwards.
Why is France one of the countries in Europe where there's the highest number of women who are murdered by their partners?
So it's 100 now, since January. I have to say that it's the exact same number every year. It's not a special year. This year is special because even now they have a name and an identity, but it's the same every year. So it's one every 2.5 days. That's it, exactly. I have to say also about the figures that yes, we've had 100 victims this year, but we've had much more. When we have like 126 every year, that's the women. But there's about 400 every year who are killed in the context of domestic violence. Children? How many children have died this year? How many children under the age of 18 have witnessed this? And sometimes were killed by the partner or ex-partner, father or stepfather or whatever. How many neighbors? 2 years ago, there were 2 police officers were shot by the guy who was killing his wife. I mean, it's not just those 100 women; it's 400 people every year. That's a lot of drama. We're talking about screaming and shouting and kids who are scared and broken homes, and it's human tragedies all the time.
All right, it's more than 100 now in France, we're told. And One of the few countries where the rate is even higher is neighboring Germany, at least 109 since the start of 2019, including to one count by advocates there. Germany, where year on, more women are murdered by their partners than here in France.
Germany still is a very patriarchal country. In France, for example, more women are working. Violence against women is very often linked to their unequal status.
Jane Monckton-Smith, is that true? When women are more empowered economically, there's less of a chance of them being murdered?
So are you talking to me?
Yes.
I think it's quite complicated, but sometimes where we see that women have more power and they earn more, sometimes the homicide rate goes up because it's the control is being taken away. The women are more emancipated. They can leave more easily. They can live on their own more easily, and that creates problems where you've got a culture that says that people should be in relationships and the man is the head of that relationship.
So, and you were saying your sister, a successful career woman.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, yes, the economic dependence of the woman is an issue. And if we want to help women, we also need to think of the bridges we can make between associations who help women get back into work, and maybe the employment sectors that require need to recruit but don't really find people to work. So there are some bridges here that can be made, and that's one of the things that I want to bring to the Grenelle is how can we do that
seminar.
to empower, to enable women to actually either feel stronger and stay in their marriage if it can still be the case, or leave and make a living without the man.
Which brings me back to what you said earlier, which is thoroughly depressing, how more and more it's younger women, because shouldn't we be living in an age where young people feel along gender lines feel more empowered?
It would be nice, and maybe it is sometimes, but I see lots of situations where I've trained people at A&E at the Hôpital Cochin in Paris to detect and ask the right questions in domestic violence, and they see really young women who are in a sort of crazy romantic whatever stuff, and because they believe they're so young, if you love me then you're going to tell me where you are, if you love me you're not doing this and you're doing that, and you're coming back at 7 and not at 8, and you're not going out with so and so.
And you say the numbers are steady, so it's the age-old argument. Is this something that is worse than before, or just something that we're more aware of?
It's something that we're more aware of. I mean, really, if someone hears the neighbor tomorrow beating up his wife, I hope they will do something. I mean, this is what we are all talking about here.
Which is what that neighbor in Cagnes-sur-Mer says didn't happen. She said she called the police, and the police thought it was a dispute. They didn't realize it was a beating. That's their claim.
Well, maybe at least now police officers will think twice, and maybe they'll think, oh my God, I don't want to be the next one who makes a mistake here.
Jane Monckton-Smith, why do you think the numbers are even higher in Germany?
I really don't know. The numbers are high absolutely everywhere. It will depend on the population. It depends as well on the culture, and it depends on the culture of your criminal justice system as well. If the police and the criminal justice system are treating domestic, what we might call arguments or domestic abuse, as a private matter or as a non-serious matter, which is what I think the bigger problem is, it's just not seen as particularly serious. Or they're just having a row. If we just split them up for 5 minutes, they'll both go on their own, they'll make up and everything will be fine. And of course, that is not the way domestic abuse happens. And I think that's one of the problems. We have to start taking it a lot more seriously, especially where it looks as if two people might be splitting up.
Martine Moscovici, do you get the sense that we've reached a turning point?
Yes, but you were talking about Germany, but let's talk about Spain. Spain made great job about domestic violence. The figure has really decreased, and they did a really good job.
How did they do it?
They have special courts. I don't know if it's bad or not. They have special phones, and also when a woman complains, the police is coming immediately. They really do something for against domestic violence. And there's also something I would like to add, that women should never accept violence. It's not acceptable that someone slaps you or says you bad things. Women should never accept violence. And men should be also educated not to be violent. But we should also educate women, because violence is not acceptable at any moment.
Hélène de Pensée, this is all very new to you. It happened in April, this tragedy. And here you are tomorrow going to the Prime Minister's office.
Yes, very motivated, as you can imagine. So first of all, my sister was a brilliant person, and she was very engaged in many causes. And I think what was very important to her was to make this world a better world. So by her work in the health and beauty cosmetic sector, she did a lot. She brought a lot to the market. And also, she was also really convinced everyone could become better. So she was very engaged into changing people to make it, our world a better world. So I'm here because I'm here for her. I'm here because I think this is a very important cause. And I'm sure she's not very far away from here. And I'm sure she would love for me to fight for this cause. So that's the reason why I'm strongly engaged at this point, and I really wanted to be sitting at the Grenelle and bring what I could. The second reason why I'm doing that is because Marie didn't get a chance to file any complaint. She went from psychological hold, emprise, as we say in French, to death. And there was no...
there was no in-between period.
No, not that we knew of. So to me, it means that psychological abuse or non-physical abuse need to be taken very seriously.
And detected early.
And detected early. So one of the things that I fight for is prevention. You know, I think we all have a role to play in prevention. So there is this tool that I've been sent by an association I contacted that is called the violentomètre, which is a violentometer.
Violence meter?
Yes, which is a tool that will help you figure out if what's happening to you is green, orange, or red. So, you know, being kept away from your friends, being isolated is not okay.
All right, and if you're watching us again here in France, that hotline number, if you feel as though something is very wrong, is again
3919.
3919. Thank you, Natasha. I want to thank you very much for speaking up, Hélène de Pensée, Martine Moscovici, Jane Monckton-Smith, for being with us from England. Thank you for joining us. Stay with us. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Olivia Salazar-Winspear. I said at the outset of the program, 100 women in France killed at the hands of their partners in 2019. You're saying that number's actually gone up.
It has gone up, actually. Today, sadly, a woman who was admitted to hospital yesterday has passed away today, putting that number up to 101. And of course, it was that figure, 100, that prompted the march yesterday in the streets of Paris. And that activism has continued very much online, with a lot of groups and individuals using social media to lobby the government ahead of tomorrow's summit, or Grenelle, to urge them to make binding decisions and make, commit to significant measures that will last. Now, this tweet is from a major feminist association here in France, saying it's absolutely urgent. The summit against domestic violence should not just be a PR operation, but the launch of a national campaign to fight feminicide. And contrary to what they say, the government is actually not doing everything within their power. Next, a similar idea from this Paris-based MP, Danielle Obono from Jean-Luc Mélenchon's left-wing France Unbowed party, saying that instead of another blah-blah summit, the government should meet its responsibilities when it comes to upping the budget and training professionals, as you mentioned here on the debate, to deal with this. And they link to the communique on their Facebook page, which goes into more detail about how they propose that should be done. Now, these big issues of budget and training, which we've talked about, are also things brought up by the president of the Fondation de France, Fondation des Femmes, President Anne-Cécile Mayfair, whose video went viral this morning when she posted something showing her appearance on Europe 1 radio station. Her tweet actually says, if I translate it for you there you go, I'm blubbering on live radio. I think it's because I can't carry on feeling helpless when I hear these victims' accounts, as if I can't change anything. Tomorrow, the Domestic Violence Summit gets underway, and that will be the moment of truth for the government on the issue. Now, when she's interviewed on the radio, there's always a video camera in there these days, she's arguing that authorities need to act more quickly in cases of domestic violence, not wait till a woman is at imminent risk of death to intervene. And then when she talks about the witness accounts that she so regularly hears, she loses her calm and she starts crying on national radio, apologising, saying that she's exhausted by the work of trying to help these women who ask her for assistance. And she again underlines this issue of resources, of budget, calling for a minimum of 500 million euros to be put towards that issue. 500
million right now? What is it?
14 million.
14
or 18 million euros, is it now?
So that's quite a scale higher. Olivia Salazar-Winspear, I want to thank you. And we'll have full coverage, by the way, of that seminar, of that conference that's taking place at the Prime Minister's office. I want to thank you. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.